Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you ladies tonight, and I really appreciate the invitation from Ronnie. Amy, I don't know you, so I don't have any background with you, but as Ronnie said, I do know her a little bit, and I've been blessed to be able to hear her keynote presentation, so I know a little bit about her background. And I have to say that I have such respect and admiration for Ronnie. And I think she truly embodies what we are as women as far as persistence and determination. And I'm just really impressed with everything that she's achieved. And I'm pleased to be in your presence, as they say. So I think, especially because of our surroundings, I feel like this is a very close-knit group. And if we could get rid of the tables, we'd all be just sitting on the floor, really having a great night of chatting and getting to know one another. So I don't have a profound message. I don't want to burden all of you with a lot of profound things that you need to be hurriedly taking down, notes that you should be taking, and efforts to change your life or to change your mindset or completely change everything that you've been doing for the last 50 years, which is the way we go away from some of these self-help speeches where we're determined to change and be a better person, and then you walk in the door and the backpacks are on the floor and the dog hasn't been fed, and that all goes out the window, and you're like, ah, you just kind of go back to what you're used to. But I am going to ask you to do one thing, and it's not to stand up and turn around and hug your neighbor. I hate that kind of stuff. But I am going to ask you to put a smile on your face. And the reason I'm going to ask you to do that is because science has proven that when you have a smile on your face, you look 10 years younger. Now, I'm not kidding you. This is research. This has been scientifically proven that when people see someone with a smile on their face, they are perceived to be younger than their chronological age. So look at all the money we'll be saving on Botox, right? So that's all I'm asking you to do, is to put a smile on your face for tonight. So I know that for some of you, just coming to this event this evening took a lot of effort. For some of you, it took a military-like strategic planning. I mean, you may feel like Patton by the time you got here. It's like, did I invade France or did I just come for a couple of hours to get away? I recognize that feeling because I know what it's like to get out of the house. And running a home is very similar to running a business, isn't it? But the difference is, in the home, you're completely working with a dysfunctional force, right? You also can't fire anyone, and you will also never retire. I'm just telling you right now, there is no end. In fact, when my husband was ready to retire, we kind of got into a few arguments because, as Ronnie mentioned, I am the sole caretaker for my son, who will be 33 in December. And I said to him, you don't get to retire until I get to retire. And the reason I had that reaction is because he was so excited about this new chapter that he was going to have in his life. He was talking about golf. He was talking about all the things he was going to get to do because he was retired. And I was like, oh, really? Do you need to get a babysitter for you to go to that golf game? So that was kind of the feeling that we had. There was a lot of contention over the fact that he got to retire. Now, how many of you live with someone or are retired yourselves? Okay.
You mean live with someone who's
live with someone who is retired, or you have retired yourself. What was that like? It
was really tough when my husband retired, because I was like, hey, you get to retire. I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah.
I could totally relate.
Yeah. And what about you? You had your hand raised.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing.
You were still working, but your husband was retired.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an age difference with my husband, too. So
Right.
older.
The thing that I found the most difficult was the fact that he was home.
Yeah.
That was the most difficult. I mean, my husband left we were married on a Friday. He was back at work on Monday. He worked 6 in the morning till at least 6 o'clock at night, Monday through Friday, often Saturdays. and usually half day on Sunday. He worked construction. And if all of you know construction, there are no hours. No one can control plane wrecks, train wrecks, storms, things like that. So I was kind of used to him, we had a schedule. He left at 6 o'clock in the morning and I did whatever I wanted to. And nobody asked me where I was going or what time I'd be back or any of those minor details. Suddenly I have this guy at my house going, "What are you doing today? What time are you going to be home?" And I'm like, I don't know. Why are you asking me these questions? But anyway, so running a home is very difficult. And I want you to know that the home itself is something that I think we don't understand really what the purpose of our homes are. We take for granted that our homes are a place where we store our belongings. Our homes are a place where we rest our heads, where we watch Netflix, where we pull our cars into a driveway and we have a safe place to put our things. But I don't think we really understand what our homes mean to us. From the time that we were brought home as infants, we were brought into a home of some kind. And we all recognize that families today look different than they did in the past. So whatever your family dynamic was, however your family was set up, as an infant, you were brought into some kind of home environment. And that environment taught you many things. And whether you know it or not, it really did shape your future. Now, many of you might say, I had a loving home. I learned hierarchy. I learned delegation. I learned what a role was, how to be a team player. I learned service. I learned gratitude. I learned that I had value. I learned that my presence, just my presence, was important, and that I played a part in this organization called a family. Many of you might look at those things and say, I didn't have any of those experiences in my home. And what I want to tell you tonight is that whether you look back on your childhood or your past home life with joy, or whether you look back and you see anger or fear or resentment, whatever it was you experienced has value. And you will learn, and you have learned from all of those experiences. I was driving in my car and I heard one of Oprah's Soul Sunday podcasts. And I heard this person talk about abuse. And she said, I learned that I needed to thank the person that had abused me, because he had taught me a lesson that I could have not learned maybe any other way. And I remember being startled and looking at the radio and did I hear this correctly? But it made me think of gratitude in an entirely different way. And it made me think about the feelings that I was experiencing that day. For the entire reason I was listening to this podcast was because I was having some conflicting feelings about someone in my family. And when I realized all of the lessons that I had learned because of the experience that I had had growing up with this person, I realized the gift that they had given me. And it changed my whole attitude. And it changed my whole outlook on what gratitude really is. But getting back to our homes, I think one of the things that we learn as a member of a family is that we have a gift, we have a talent, we have a value. And a lot of times those three things are put in different order, and we're told that those things all rely on the other thing. You have value if you pursue this gift, or if you pursue this talent. And so a lot of times when we think about what we want to be when we grow up, we think about them with a value. How much value does this profession have? If I say I'm a lawyer, does that have more value than if I own a grocery store? If I say I'm a brain surgeon, does that have more value than if I sell vacuum cleaners? And what I want you to go home with tonight is the understanding that whatever it is you do, it has value. And whatever it is you do, you are providing a service. The other day I was listening to, or I was watching a YouTube. And how many of you have seen the new David Letterman talk show that he has on, I think it's on Netflix, can't remember. He was interviewing Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld was interviewing him as well. They were asking each other questions back and forth. And David, very humbly, because you know that's what happens when you get old. You start looking back and you start reminiscing and going, well, you know, I didn't do everything I could have done. The kind of things you hear old people say, oh, I should have been a better father, or I should have done this, I should have done that. And David was saying, what I have done in my life has no value. I really haven't contributed to the world. And Jerry Seinfeld said, are you kidding me? Do you really think that's true? And he said, yes, I think that's true. And he said, you don't value your talent. He said, you went into people's homes, you made them laugh, you gave them a break from whatever it is they were going through. You changed television. You completely changed the way television is. Your talent contributed to the world. And you could see the look on David Letterman's face. He was like, really? It changed his whole person. It was amazing. And it was funny that I had flipped onto that because I was thinking and preparing for this today. And it made me realize that, you know, how many of you knew what you wanted to be when you grew up? How many of you can honestly say, when I was 3, I knew that I was going to be a real estate agent. I knew that I was going to be a naturopath. I mean, that was my goal. I knew that. How many of you feel like you're working in the profession that you thought you would be working in even in college? How many of you are working in the profession that your degree is? Yeah, Amy's kind of a little bit. Well, you know, I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. I can honestly tell you that when I was growing up, I wanted to be a mom. Honestly, that is the only profession that I wanted. I never even considered anything else in the world. I had dolls, I had babies, I played with them, I made noises. My mom would come in and say, there's a baby crying in here? What's going on? I loved babysitting. I was a good babysitter. I could not wait to have children. In fact, I wanted 10. The young. We're so naive, aren't we? We're just so naive. They're like puppies. Nobody tells you that they turn into teenagers. But anyway. So my husband and I got married. And of course, like I said, he went back to work on Monday. And I went to work, you know, the profession that I wanted to pursue. Anyway, it took me a while. But eventually we did have our first child. And then we had our second child. And then we had our third. And then we had our fourth. And then we had our fifth. And remember, I was working on 10. And after I had my fifth, I had a miscarriage. And when I went to the doctor, he said, would you be interested in birth control? And are you guys ready for this? My kids are about 22 months apart. I have a couple 18-monthers in there. I said, I don't think I'm that fertile. I thought I was in total control. I thought I was controlling my life. I thought I had control of my life. I thought I had control of my home. I love the quote that says, man makes a plan and God laughs, right? So we had our sixth, and the entire time I was carrying this baby, I had this feeling that this was going to be my last. I looked at my 9-year-old, my oldest, and I knew that this was a lot. We were doing a lot. And I just decided that maybe this would be, 6 was a good number. We would stop at 6. Now I had all of my 5 children naturally. I had them in a naturopath clinic. I brought them home 24 hours after they were born. That's kind of how I like to do it. But when I went into labor with my 6th, it was a completely different story. Needless to say, he had a very complicated birth, and it ended up being an emergency C-section. And when he was born, they discovered that he had a hole in his diaphragm and that all of his intestines and lower organs were floating up into the chest cavity. And that didn't give his lungs the space that they needed to grow. So he only had one lung that was functioning. And right before they let him come home from the hospital, he spent about a month at Oregon Health Science. And right before they discharged him, they did an EEG, and they did say, we have found brain damage. But we don't know what that means, because a lot of times in infants, they can reroute and go through different areas. So here's your baby. Good luck. See you later. So this little guy changed our lives forever. Completely changed our home, completely changed my relationship as a mother with my other 5 children. It completely changed the trajectory that I thought I had my life all mapped out and was planning on doing. What I didn't realize at the time was that I had a love of design. I thought that what I did in my home was what every woman does, to nest or to make a home for your family. What I didn't realize was that it was a calling. I could not stop thinking about design. But here's the problem. If you go to school and you get a degree in law, and then after you've passed the bar and you've been working at a law office somewhere, you decide, I enjoyed building those houses when I was in college. I'm going to go back and get into construction. Your law degree doesn't go to waste. It's a very useful tool. Everything that you learn by going to college is very useful, and you have the freedom to change your career. But when your career is raising 6 children and you decide that now you'd like to be an interior designer, you can't exactly ship the kids off and say, it was nice knowing you, thanks for the experience, I really learned a lot, but I'm going to go do something else now. So the dream that I had of being an interior designer was a little bit like, how am I going to get this done? I also questioned whether being an interior designer had value. Is this the kind of field that people really respect? Do people really need interior designers? Isn't that just for the frivolous, for the people that have more money and time than they know what to do with? Do we really need interior designers? But what I've discovered is that when you do something that you love, that love that you have transfers over to the people that you're serving. And it no longer becomes a profession, it becomes a service project out of love. And I learned what love was by caring for my son. Truly, I love my husband, I love all of my children, but the love that I have for my son, that I bathe and dress and shave and pick up and put in his wheelchair every single day, is a love that can only be described by service. Mahatma Gandhi has a quote that I absolutely love, and I want to make sure that I get it right, so I'm going to read it. But it's a quote that I've heard from many other people, including in the Bible and other religious people. But Gandhi says, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. And what I want to tell you is, one day, when I realized what love truly was, as I was bathing my son, and I just got chills. And I had that feeling in my stomach, the feeling that you had when you thought, I want to be a real estate agent, or I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be an event planner. Whatever it is you thought you wanted to be, and you were so excited about it. You couldn't even sleep. You were just so excited that you had found the thing that you loved. And I realized that I had had a very similar experience with a friend of mine who had to move out of her home because she was going to be going through a divorce. And she called me up and she said, would you help me rearrange my apartment? And I said, sure. Give me the keys to your apartment, and while you're gone at work, I'll go over and rearrange your apartment. And so while she was gone, I rearranged her furniture, ran and got a slip cover for her sofa, a few accessories and wall art, just something to brighten it up. And when she came home, she said, I can't thank you enough. I needed to have a place where I could find peace and solitude because I know the next few months are going to be chaos. And another quote that I love is that design is so important because chaos is so hard. So I no longer looked at my profession as something frivolous, something that was taking time away from my family. I looked at it with value. And I knew that I could love design just as much as I loved my family and my children, and that it was okay. So what I want you to do today is to value what you do. And you know the saying that people say, if you love what you do, it's not a job. But I want to tell you to love your job and learn to love what you do because it has value. Whether you're a bookkeeper, whether you clean homes for a living, whether you're a janitor, whether you're a cook, whatever your occupation, you are providing a service. And when you look at your service like that as a way of showing love, suddenly your profession is just as important as flying water to Puerto Rico, or brain surgery, or all of the other things that we look at as charitable. And we think, well, I don't do enough for the world. I'm just one bookkeeper in Vancouver, Washington. What am I doing to serve people? But if you understood what you did created peace for your clients, they're trying to run a business. They're trying to provide a home for their family. They need you. What you do is important for them to keep that business open. And when you look at your job with that kind of respect and love, it completely changes your outlook in life. So I appreciate this opportunity to be with you ladies who value your homes, you value your families, but you also value your love and your drive and the talents and the gifts that you've been given. So thank you for this opportunity. One thing that I wanted to say was, because of our son's disability, we learned very quickly that if you have somebody in your family that requires a wheelchair that does not fold up and go into the back of the car, you have to have a wheelchair accessible vehicle. And what I didn't understand was that wheelchair accessible vehicles are like buying a car twice. You basically pay for the car, and then you will put at least $28,000, that's minimum, to revamp that car and make it wheelchair accessible. So you're looking at families that are already strained, their budgets are already strained because they have a medically fragile child, and now you're telling them that they're going to get a minivan, mind you, that's about $65,000. I always say, just humor me. Put a Mercedes sticker in front of the Toyota sticker and make me feel good that I have a $68,000 car in my driveway. But so my husband and I started a foundation about 2.5 years ago, where we grant families that have children ages 3 to 18 grants that will help them, assist them in purchasing wheelchair accessible vehicles. So that is my love right now. That is what I'm doing right now. And we are growing. We have served almost 20 families in the last 2 years. But of course, word of mouth is your best form of advertising. Unless you're a small foundation and word of mouth is getting out, you're getting more and more requests for grants, but the donations aren't necessarily coming in as fast as the requests are. So we're always looking for corporations and other ways to bring money into our foundation. So that's my need. If you know of anybody, if you sell anyone a house that doesn't have, has $1 million they don't know what to do with, I have a really good place for them. So anyway, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Renee.